Greetings. I'm Lloyd Russell, your host of Lit with Lloyd. And I want to thank KCAT for sponsoring the show. And today, my guest is someone that I've known for quite a few decades, actually. Her name is Elayne Klasson, and she has written two very highly acclaimed novels that we will, of course, talk about. Welcome, Elayne. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Lloyd. It's really great to be here.
So, in reference to those decades, our kids went to the same school. I was on the board when you were the president of the board. But I don't remember you ever talking about writing a novel back then. So how did that start?
Probably my most deeply held wish. When I was in college, I took an English class, and I was in a medical profession. I was an occupational therapy major, then went on to get a degree in public health and in psychology. But when I was an undergrad at Ohio State, I had an English professor say, well, what kind of a writer do you want to be? And I fumbled and said, oh, no, I could never be a writer. But of course, she had scoped me out. That was my deepest dream, but I never had the confidence. And then did an occasional newspaper piece, and then in my 40s, looked at the continuing ed booklet at Stanford and saw the creative writing classes and said, I want to do this. And if not now, when? And for better or worse, I got a lot of encouragement. And through my 40s and 50s and 60s, I got some very prestigious writing residencies. Got a few stories published, but a lot of rejections. Could, as they say,
like every author.
Yeah, could paper my writing room with rejections. But truly, I discovered over a period of years that long-form fiction was what I was really after, rather than short stories.
Okay. Something that I actually forgot to do, which is normal, but I would like to hear from the audience. Audience, how's it going over there? Okay, don't take it personally that I forgot about you. Okay. Well, I want to get into the books, but how did you actually get published with your first novel?
Wow. I tried a lot of agents, and I have since come to find out that it's really not a lot of agents. I mean, you read about and you talk to very accomplished and very famous writers, such as, the Harry Potter series and so on. And they did 70 or 80 submissions, but I would do about 20 submissions, and then I would get too discouraged. And what would I do? I would start a new novel. And that was why I had 3 pretty finished novels in my desk, because I just couldn't face submitting after a certain point. Then my cousin told me about a publisher called She Writes Press, which publishes only women and publishes about 40 women a season, 40 women in the winter and 40 women in the spring. And it's you submit directly. And they put you on a certain track if you're ready or not ready. And so it's a small publisher, but I have nothing but extreme good things to say about She Writes. They not only do a really good job with editing, but they do a really good job in cover. Their cover work wins prizes constantly. Wow. And they're really good at distribution. So they are distributed just as any major publisher. So going with a small publisher has not been a bad thing for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It seems like more and more authors are using smaller independent publishers,
right?
Because the big 5 is so airtight.
Yeah, yeah. It just seemed an impossible nut to crack.
Yeah.
And I only have so many years left, so I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, quite a few, certainly, but I understand.
Knock on wood.
Yes. So I know of 2 books of yours that I've read and certainly enjoyed, but do you actually have a third that I don't know about?
Yeah, that's not been published.
Got it. Is it going to be, or was it just the first one that got you into the second and third ones?
Probably that. It's a book about 2 women, and it is early. It's an early book. I mean, I'm not saying that I won't go back to it, but it's not where I'm at right now. Where I'm at right now is creating a book about 5 women who are traveling through Sicily together, long-term friendships. And I'm really interested, a la Elena Ferrante, who's my hero in her books about friendship, the Neapolitan Quartet. I'm really interested in examining the truth of women's friendships. And so I don't know if this is coming out too early, but the 3 things that really I felt passionate about, and it does reflect the first book too, which is about friendship. The things I was most passionate about is who do we love and why do we love those people? And the whole concept of love and the choices we make in our love relationships is fascinating to me, and thus the first book that was published, Love is a Rebellious Bird. The second thing I was passionate about is figuring out our kids. And having several kids, I was very interested in nature versus nurture, so that's the second book. And the third book, the thing I'm really interested in, because it's meant so much to me throughout my life, is women's friendships, which has sustained me and which is just so important to me. I mean, I can't imagine getting through life without these deep women's friendships. So that's what I'm writing right now, and I hope to publish it also.
Great. Okay. Do you have a rough time frame for finishing? First question. And second question is, we know that the traditional publishers take about a year to publish from the time they get it. What kind of time frame does that work with She Writes?
Oh, at least. It's actually more like 18 months.
Really?
She Writes. Yeah, they're getting more and more popular. And so the waiting list is a little longer. And they really do a very thorough job with editing. So that takes a long time. And
okay.
So I'm in line. I haven't even really gotten in line with She Writes for the third book, and it's not finished. I would imagine it'll be about a year till I finish it. But I think that since I've done pretty well with the first 2 books, that I'll probably stay where I am and stay with them.
Good. I assume they have the option of saying, we published 2, but we don't want the third.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
I hope not. And I'm quicker now than I was. I think I was just in such agony about everything with the first book, and that's why the Earthquake Child, which is actually was written before She Writes, before Love is a Rebellious Bird. I stopped, didn't get it published, and so went into writing The Earthquake Child. But in fact, Love is a Rebellious Bird was written before. The Earthquake Child was written before, because I was very interested in the adoption issue a long time ago, and maybe 15, 20 years ago. So the germ of that idea began earlier, but I couldn't get it published. So then I went into the love book. So I'm quicker now. I don't agonize about everything as much. I have perhaps more belief in myself, more belief in my instincts, and don't do it. I could spend 2 hours crossing out and the, and go back to and then the, and go back, and I'm not doing that quite as much. I'm letting the sentences flow a little bit more.
Good. Do you have early readers that will weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely. When I lived in Los Gatos, we've since moved down to Santa Barbara, but when I lived in Los Gatos, I had a monthly soiree in my living room, and my very close girlfriends would come, and I would occasionally invite other people that I knew were really serious readers, and I would read chapters, and that was very, very helpful. And then I had beta readers with both books, but in particular with The Earthquake Child, I had in my experience, in my friendships, and in my relatives, several people who have adopted children, and I sent out early versions of The Earthquake Child to get a feel whether was I giving the feel of adoption. Everyone's adoption experience is very individual, but I did send it out to 5 or 6 women, and they are given credit in the acknowledgments section, who I knew had sometimes good experiences, sometimes traumatic experiences, but had experiences with adoption to ask if this book resonated with them.
And their comments helped you better formulate the book?
Yeah. I think what always made me nervous is I would generally get comments back that this is sad. And I thought, gosh, is anyone going to want to read a downer book? Love is a Rebellious Bird was not such a downer.
Right.
I mean, there was aspects of it that were about the life cycle. But I don't think anyone considered it a downer. This is a heavier book. And when I've had discussions with people, inevitably it gets to heavy matters that are deep in your heart. And I was afraid of that. I really was. I was just feeling like, people are going to throw this across the room. But that has not been the experience.
Good.
So far people are saying, I know what you mean. Even those who haven't adopted, those who have children who are incredibly different from each other, or perhaps a troubled child, but a biologically troubled child who is a biological child.
Right.
So I haven't had that experience. It's very new. It's only been out 2 weeks, but I haven't had the experience yet where people are saying, why did you do this to me?
Yeah. And I was going to ask, have you gotten feedback from people that have adopted children? But with only 2 weeks, it probably is fairly light so far.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, it's just the best is I've gotten 2 letters from people who said that the book was very comforting to them, and they are adoptive parents. And so that even though it's not a joy and Hallmark card loveliness, people are saying, yes, you get me, and I'm not alone. And that whole thing that all of us feel when we read is just the comfort of knowing that other human emotions are like our own.
Yeah. Well, as a big reader myself, I read a lot of different genres, which I think many people do now.
Right.
And not every book has to have, all happiness. I mean, that's not real to only have happy things going on. So I'm sure that a lot of people will read this and take it for what it is.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's a tough time right now. There's a lot of depressing news to absorb. So I do think some people do want to escape. And I don't know that I would call this an escape book.
Yeah. Well, I think those are called beach reads. I mean, whenever I hear the word beach read, there's an image in my mind of something that's just kind of light. But I don't think that any type of book should be read at any specific time of year. I think you can read anything at any time.
Right.
But if they're looking for a beach read, then they'll know what to go for. All right. So, what prompted you to write about the 2 books that you wrote about, and how did you develop the characters? I mean, especially for the Earthquake Child, the book is basically about a youngish boy. How do you get into the head of a different gender and different age?
People have been asking me that a lot because they feel like with Earthquake Child, I've gotten into the head of a teenager. I have this ability. A lot of things I can't remember, and a lot of things I'm just a complete dolt at. But what I'm really good at is remembering conversations and remembering, like I'll go home from a party and I'll relive the party, what I say or what I should have said, what somebody else said. And I hear these voices. So that makes me feel comfortable with dialogue. I can hear someone saying something. And in the beginning of The Earthquake Child, we read about a young man who's escaped, run away from a therapeutic boarding school. And he is really on the lam. And I had the experience in my own life of a therapeutic boarding school, but I didn't know what had happened when this young man ran away. but I could just see it. I could just see it. And I could, I've had 4 kids. I could see teenagers talking to each other. I understand that the basic emotion of teenagers is to get out of their parents' control, to individuate, to be on their own. Like, who are you to tell me what to do? And I just knew that emotion from this teenage boy. And so I wasn't there when in the book this teenage boy, which as I said was based on reality, but when this teenage boy ran from the therapeutic boarding school, but I could just hear him being pissed off. So I have that. I mean, a lot of writers don't write dialogue because they don't. I'm reading a book right now where it's 0 dialogue, and it won the Pulitzer Prize 2 years ago. So it can be done, but I do have the kind of brain that remembers and hears voices.
Wow. Well, it's a good thing that we weren't friends way back when, because whenever we went out with people on a Saturday night, I had to get on the apology hotline the next day. So I'm glad we don't have any of that. But
no.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with Elayne Klasson.
Thank you to the City of Montessorino for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montessorino has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
And we are back with Elayne Klasson. Okay, I want to ask you about what happens when you're writing. First of all, are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you know those expressions? No.
I do not.
The plotter basically does a whole outline before the book starts. The pantser has an idea and just flows with it as she or he is writing the book. So are you one or the other, or both?
No, and I have now listened to enough writers answer that question to know that I'm actually doing something a little different.
Okay.
So what I do is I keep a notebook, and this has really, really worked for me for Love is a Rebellious Bird. I write every image and every scene I can think of about this man and woman, this boy and this girl. And I might be just describing this beautiful linen shirt he was wearing when he walked into the restaurant, and how everyone looked up and commented on what a great shirt that was. I might have just little anecdotes, and they aren't in any order, but they're a way for me to kind of get deep with the characters and see who they are and what they look like and what they might say and how they might react. And so then, after having like pages and pages of anecdotes, I then will shape it. And in Love is a Rebellious Bird, I shaped it by saying very chronologically that these 2 people met in Chicago as 10-year-olds. And I then shape anecdotes that I would put in about showing this relationship growing among 2 children, and then 2 high schoolers, and then 2 boyfriend, girlfriend, and then 2 lovers. So I'm able to then pull these scenes, which when I wrote them were so vivid that I think I could get them into the story and make it a novel, shape it into a novel, because a novel can't be just a bunch of anecdotes.
Yeah.
But they help me. And then the same was true with The Earthquake Child. I wrote out a lot of anecdotes as they came to me about this rebellious child, about the child when he wasn't rebellious, when he was beautiful and angelic and adorable. I just would imagine this child. There's a scene where the child goes with his mom for the first time to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and at that point, it wasn't the Asian Art Museum. It was I think it was the Natural History Museum. But he's at the museum with his mom, looking at the warriors from China, and that scene was really vivid in my mind. And so then I created as needed, as it's needed to to help us understand this little boy and what this little boy was like with his mom. And then I would have scenes where the birth mother, who was totally imagined because I really don't know anything about the birth mother in my own adoption story, but I created a person and what she was like and what it felt like when she found out she was pregnant and what it felt like when she knew she wasn't going to get help from her mom or from her boyfriend. So I would create these anecdotes about the birth mom and then create it into a character and so on with the adoptive mom. And in the case of the earthquake child, this is not chronological totally. So I do go back and forth a little bit. But by using these anecdotes, I'm able, as I said, to shape it so that we know these three people. And that's my whole goal at the end of the book, is that we know these three people for better or worse, and we really have gotten inside the gut of these three people.
Oh, wow. Do the characters talk to you during the book? Does the direction ever change because you feel like the character is saying something to you?
No, I've heard writers say that they're being led by the characters. No, I'm in charge. Yeah, I know where I want them to go.
Yeah.
And I know what tone I want to have, and I want the reader to know about these characters. So I'm shaping them.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about some fun stuff right now. Tell us about the various awards and nominations that you've gotten for at least Love as a Rebellious Child, also for the Earthquake Child?
No.
That's too soon, isn't it?
It's too soon.
Yeah.
Most of the awards, if they happen, will be in the next, like in the spring.
Okay. But for Love as a Rebellious Bird.
Yeah, I mean, utter amazement, Lloyd. I thought having a debut novel at age 72 was going to be an interesting experience, and I was just thrilled to be published. Thrilled to hold a book in my hands that had a cover and my name on it, and that it was going to be read by people. And I wasn't sure how many people would read it. Would it just be people who were being kind?
Friends?
Yeah, right. Friends and relatives. I did very well with that. And it started in Los Angeles. I was invited to be a speaker at the Skirball Museum in LA. And it was a huge group. It was a group of supporters of Brandeis University. And it was just a huge event in LA. And that, I think it's that event, I can't figure out anything else, put me on the bestseller list of independent bookstores. Number 6. I was number 6, and boy, did I cut that out. And I was, to be on the bestseller list of a bookshops in LA. So that was a thrill. And then I applied for the National Jewish Book Award and was a runner-up. So that was just really a thrill. When I looked at the other people in my category, another person in my category, this was just a fun thing, was Fleischman is in Trouble. It was a recent series on TV.
Saw it.
And she was the other runner-up. And I thought, okay, what does Taffy Brobecker have? What connections does she have? But she was before writing this Fleischman is in Trouble, she's a columnist, newspaper writer for the New York Times. So she has a few better ins, but I was really thrilled to be in that company. And because of the Jewish Book Award, I auditioned for the Traveling National Jewish Book Council, and they send you, after you audition, they send you to as many organizations that want to hear you. So it will be Jewish organizations around America. And I got 14 cities, which was really cool. So I got to speak to a lot of people and a lot of readers. And that was really exciting.
Fantastic.
And a few other awards. The independent. There's an IPPY award for independent publishers, and there were, I think, 5 or 6 really nice awards. But the biggest to me was the National Jewish Book Award, because that was really an award that people are very familiar with. And
yeah, wow,
yeah.
That's really so cool.
Yeah, and I've sold really pretty well. I mean, I don't know, it's way above the average for a first book. So obviously, this has nothing to do with money, because I'm not in those esteemed ranks. It's a pittance, really. But I think it's so not to do with that, and it's so to do with the thrill of people reading what I care about, the subjects I really care about.
Yeah, and that's really cool, because, I mean, your books are all about subjects that you do really care about.
Yes.
It's not that other fiction books aren't also entertaining and fun to read, but obviously you're writing from the heart.
Yeah, I hope so.
And that shows through.
Yeah.
Are all of your both books? I still would like to see that third book come out sometime.
I hope so.
Are all of your books in E and audio?
The first book is they're both in E, and the first book, Love is a Rebellious Bird, is in audio. Had a great narrator, a gal from Brooklyn, Kimberly Westerly. I auditioned lots of readers, and the big deal about audiobook, and I know I could not do it, is that you have to be able to do accents, and you have to be able to do a man and a woman in conversation, and make your voice sound believable. And I've done a little acting, but I could never do a love scene between a man and a woman. And Kimberly can, and she's delightful. And I had no trouble picking her out of the 6 or 7 audition tapes that I heard. I haven't done the audio yet for Earthquake Child. I really want to. I think you'll probably look at it in the fall. And did I really screw that up? Kimberly has been interested in doing it again, and writers are on strike right now, and the actors have joined them, so she's obviously not working right now.
Yeah.
But she has expressed interest, because we had a really good time working together over Zoom and over email. I mean, we've never met. But I have heard tapes of her doing teenagers. So there is that section of the book that is about teenager, but I haven't really heard her read other parts of my book, and I want to do that. But I do want to have an audio for that. I think audiobooks are just getting so much more popular.
They're so fantastic. It always bothers me when people who listen to audiobooks act like or say that they're not reading. That is the equivalent of reading.
It is.
And we know people that only do audiobooks, and that's a fantastic way to hear and read a book.
Yeah, I've actually now I'm listening to the audio and reading Abraham Verghese's new book, and he narrates his own book. He's wonderful, but that's an interesting experience too. But I do want to get the audio out. More and more people are talking about how they're really shifting to audio, so I want to do the Earthquake Child.
Yeah. Well, and that's great that you have control over that. Mm-hmm. I assume you also have control over the cover art for the paperback?
Yeah. We do a whole cover memo to the publisher and the art department of what is the mood we want to convey. And of course, I'm going to forget the name of the artist, but there's a pretty famous artist that didn't do my cover because he's so famous that we wouldn't have been able to afford it. But he has a picture of a child looking at the ocean. And I said, I know that we cannot use this picture that this artist drew, but I want to have something about a contemplative child looking at the water.
Uh-huh.
And so they came up with that, and the fact that the child is blonde in my book is pretty important. So we tried to get them to lighten the hair a little, but I think it gives a sense of a child who's thinking.
Yeah. Who are your influences that actually help you with the writing, just in terms of incentive and motivation and all?
You mean real people or writers?
Writers, I mean.
Yeah, because Wallace Stegner said that you always write with someone looking over your shoulder and are trying to get that person's approval. And I would say that it is definitely someone I love as Wallace Stegner. But I do love long-form fiction that goes over generations. I feel that whole concept of moving through life and moving through time, something I really like to do, rather than a short book that is about, or it could be a long book, but that is about a year in the life or even a month in the life. I feel I like to go through generations. So I mentioned Elena Ferrante earlier, absolutely one of my strongest influences. I love the concept of two women going through life together. And I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez for the same reasons, that he goes through generations of a family. And
wow.
I'm very, very fond of Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah.
I love Alice Munro, even though I've said that I don't write short fiction. I think Alice Munro can put in 30 pages an entire lifetime, because she's the master of short story, as exemplified by the fact that she won the Nobel Prize. And the recent winner of the Nobel Prize, this year's winner of the Nobel Prize, Annie, can you help me out? French. Just a recent.
Proulx?
No, not Annie Proulx, but she's.
Not sure.
Ernaux.
No.
Thank you, David. Annie Ernaux, Ernaux, has become a real influence for me, in that she makes it okay to write domestic stuff. She won the Nobel Prize for writing domestic stuff about a woman's experience with having children, with marriages that work, that marriages that don't work, with lovers. So I'll have to remember that name, Annie Ernaux, because I'm quoting her quite a bit. So I think that people who aren't afraid to go domestic, who aren't afraid to talk about one's marital life, raising children, that those are okay subjects. Those are okay subjects for literature.
Wow. Well, back quickly to the audiobook. It seems like your next book will be pretty easy to find a narrator. It's 5 women.
Right. Well, that's a much bigger budget. When you have multiple readers, it's a much bigger budget, and I wouldn't have that budget. So you have to have somebody that could do different voices.
Yeah.
Whoa, Lloyd, you're scaring me.
I forget I said that, along with many other things that I typically say. So it's okay. I know that you've only had one book that's been out for a while. Have you had any interest from a TV or movie studio?
No, from your words.
I know.
To God's ears. Yeah. I told my publicist I was going to give her a big, fat, juicy bonus if she got me either to Jenna's book club or Reese's book club, or even, I don't even dare say it out loud, the book club of all book clubs.
Of course.
Yes. And I have been on a panel with people who have been Jenna's book club, and I've been on a panel with people who have been Reese's book club. And I have asked them, how do you do it? What's the secret? Who do you contact? And they have all said, and I think they're telling the truth, that you don't contact them.
Absolutely. I can see that.
Yeah.
Somebody in their group is searching out all the latest authors.
Right. Yeah, that would be a dream. I would love it, because you get to really talk about your book if you get that kind of publicity.
Okay, so let me ask you just a very mundane question. How do you time your writing? Do you write a certain amount of hours a day, or do you just kind of wing it?
So I'm not writing right now because publicity takes a huge chunk of time and energy. But when I am actively writing, and I've started the new book about friendship, I know that works for me is to do 8 pages forward and 8 pages back. So I go back first. I look back at the pages I created, 8 pages the day before, and I tweak it. Then I work with it, and then that puts me into the headspace to go forward.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So you really got to get into the headspace, I find. And I get so deep. I mean, I have had writing residencies. I've been lucky enough to go to gorgeous places in the world to do writing residencies. But I live now in a very beautiful place above a vineyard. And I mean, I can't say that I could go anywhere more beautiful than where we live. I look out my window and there's a vineyard. So it's lovely. So great writing at home, but I just have to say to myself, nothing for the next 6 or 8 hours. And I won't write constantly for 6 or 8 hours, but I have to be in that headspace. And then I will hear nothing once I'm in that space. Like when my husband comes home and like comes behind me, I'll jump 10 feet.
Well, that sounds great. And you know, of all the authors that I've asked this question to, none of them have said to me, I go back and tweak the pages from yesterday and start again. Maybe they do, but it's the first time I've heard it, and it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it gets you into the headspace you want to be.
Yeah,
to move forward.
Good. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. This has been great, enlightening, fascinating. I want to thank the audience again for being here. I just want to say that this has really been a thrill too, and it really has been fun. When I look at Lloyd, I see him as we were sitting across the table at the school board we were on, and I see him as a young dad, and I see him around town in the last few decades, and it's really just such a pleasure to see you again. Thank you. I appreciate it. The word young is not often attached to my name, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to close the book on today's podcast. I certainly want to thank KCAT for letting us do this. I want to thank Elayne for being here. It was a great interview. And if you want to see other podcasts, then you can go on lloyd.show/YouTube. And if you don't, just ignore what I said up to right now. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.
You just heard Lit with Lloyd here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.